Hi, I'm Steve and I'm going to go over the rest of how to make the results section for your assignment. So up to now what we have is the raw data. We had 22 subjects, and in this Excel spreadsheet what we have, we calculated the mean and the standard deviation, and that's about as much as we've done in Excel. But of course what we are going to do is we're going to use that statistics package SPSS. And if I click here, what we have is an output. Yes, if we look at it down the bottom there, it's 35 pages long, so there's a bit of rooting around to get all the information. And of course, you can't just hand this in and say, well, there's the results, here you go, because 35 pages is not readable. And the whole idea of research and writing a research paper is to make it as readable as is possible. So up to now, what have we done? Well, there was the raw data. What we've done is we've tried to make it as readable as possible by summarizing it in this table here. So we've got age, stature, mass, and then of course the 3 tests that we did. And we've simplified it by just identifying the mean. Now, as you can see, anyone that's reading it, first of all, the first 3 columns here help identify what was a population that did it. So it looks like a mean age of 20 plus or minus 4, height of 173 with only about 8 centimeters variation in between there, and then body mass of about 84. And there's a bigger kind of a variety of body mass that did this test. So that kind of gives you an overview. And as we discussed, what that says to me is that it was a student population. Look, mainly because of the age here. You got 20 years plus or minus 4, so that's looking like an HE population of students. And then of course we've got the 3 tests, that is what we're going to compare. How to label it: tables, put the title on the top, table 1, mean standard deviation. One thing that I didn't mention at the session was it's always nice as well to identify how many people were involved in this. So at the end here I've put brackets, n equals 22. Another thing that I prefer is table 1, figure 1 and all that lot, just to make it a little bit easier for me to understand. My personal preference, which is done in a lot of research, instead of using the numerical 1, we use the Roman 1 for tables, and then for figures we can then use the numerical 1. So that's one of my preferred things, but I can't really mark you down for anything like that. It's your personal preference. Of course, when you go to universities, they'll have stronger stipulations on what and how you label your figures and diagrams, so you just have to read their instructions and guidelines. At the end of this table, of course, what we've done is we just do a quick description of it. So here's an example of the first one where I've just written mean age was 20.23 plus or minus 4.16 years. I've included the units, as you should do, which is conference student sample. So all I'd expect you to do is do something similar for the others. Just do a quickie summary, and you can identify it if you think some of these numbers are the same. For example, the Margarita Stare test was 14.71, whereas the Wingate was 13.58. So you can say they're similar, but the Margarita is higher. So later on we'll try and work out whether there is a correlation or whether their numbers are significantly different. So onto the correlations then. Here's the first figure on here, and what we have is a comparison of the Wingate test with the Sargent jump. And as you can see, there is the line of best fits that was found using regression analysis, and all these dots are all the points. And the whole idea is if it's a strong correlation, it should all line up together. And as you can see, it doesn't really, so there's not a strong correlation. And if we have a look on page 33 of the SPSS outputs, here we've done some statistical correlations, and for the Wingate and the Sargent jump, it's got a Pearson correlation, or R value, of 0.168. And as I mentioned in the class, if it's close to 0, then there's absolutely no relationship between the Wingate score and the Sargent jump score, and if it's a 1, it's a perfect spot on, and as what you should see is all the dots along a straight line. So 1.168 kind of represents that scattered diagram there. There isn't anything that looks very significant on there. And in here what we also have is the sig value. The sig value here basically says 0.454, and the magic number here is 0.05. If that value is beneath 0.05, then there is a significant correlation, and as you can see, 0.454 is quite a lot bigger than 0.05, so there is no significant correlation. So there's a title underneath, and what I've done here is just a quick sentence kind of saying figure 1 shows relationship between Wingate power test and sergeant jump test, but the more important thing is I'm now bringing in this correlation here. There is no significant relationship between the two tests, and I've in brackets I've put the correlation value, the R value 0.168, and P is less than 0.05, just means to the level that we've done it. Or in other words, as mentioned beforehand, if we did this test 100 times, 95 times out of 100 we get the same results, that there is no significant correlation. That's pretty strong, really. The next graph to include will be the comparison between the Margarita and the Wingate test, and here it is through the SPSS package. So all I need to do is right click on it, copy it. Yeah, this is a Mac that I'm doing this on, so it'll look different on a PC, and then all I need to do is paste it. And there you go. Of course, the next step of writing perfect academic reports is to put a title on it. So I'm going to slightly cheat. I'm going to copy, stick that in there, and of course it's not figure 1 anymore. Let's call that figure 2. Comparison of Wingate power test and Margarita stair test. And N is still 22. So there you go. I've done that. Quick description. Could slightly cheat again. Copy this again. Figure 2 shows the relationship between the Wingate and the Margarita stair test. There is a significant relationship between these two tests. I'm going to do that to just speed it up. But now, if we go to the correlation values for this one, for the Margarita stair test compared to the Wingate, it's got a value of 0.862. It's got 2 asterisks on there, and if you have a look underneath there, correlation is significant at the 0.01 level, so it's even a greater level of significance than the 0.05 that we have been reporting at. So all I need to do there is R equals 0.862. I'm going to keep it as P equals 0.05 because it just standardizes it all. In the end, it's saying there is a significant correlation between the Wingate power test and the Margarita stair test. So that's that done. We have identified that if you do the Margarita stair test, you can have a similar results to the Wingate. Or in other words, that if you're bad at one, you're going to be bad at the other, and if you're really good at one, be good at the other. And this is going back to what the research question was: can we do a field-based study that will give you a similar results to the Wingate test? And yes, the Margarita stair test is a good idea. So if you go out in the field and you do find a flight of stairs, then you could do the Margarita stair test. But going back to that first table, table 1, you notice that the Margarita stair test has a score of 14.71 and the Wingate has 13.58. And the question is it giving you the same value? Are we measuring explosive power and getting the same results? The Margarita test is about, well, it's over 1 watt per kilogram higher than the Wingate. So it does look a little bit bigger, but the question is there a significant difference, or is it just part of a testing? You will always get one slightly higher than the other, and this is an output of it. So of course what we did do was we did the t-test. What we can then do is we can then report in it. So if I go back to the SPSS output on, well, the title's on page 33, but the output is on page 34. So with the t-test results, what you do is it works out the means and the standard deviations, first part of a t-test, and then it actually does a correlation. So there you get the correlation value, which funnily enough is exactly the same number as what we got with our correlation beforehand. And then what we can then do is, the only thing that we need to do to see if there's a significant difference is look at the sig value at the very end. Sig two-tailed means it's a normal standard, a normal distribution curve, and if that value is less than 0.05, then there is a significant difference, and 0.01 is less than 0.05, so there is. Or in other words, going back to our results here, that 14.71 is significantly different to that one. So the two tests do report different values. The Margarita will always give you a score that is slightly higher than the Wingate test. You can't substitute one for the other without taking that into consideration. So Margarita will always score slightly higher. So how do we write that? Simplest way, there we go. So what we do is, however, there is a significant difference between the Margarita and the Wingate tests. Now, of course, that's our results section done. We've identified the general anthropometric data and summarized the means for each of the 3 tests. We've done a couple of correlations to show if there is a relationship. So the Sargent and Wingate, no relationship. Margarita and Wingate, there is a relationship, significant. And then we did a t-test and the numbers are significantly different. So you can use one compared to the other. So you can use the Margarita instead of the Wingate, and you will be able to rank people that participate as who's the best and so on. However, they don't measure exactly the same value, so you just have to take that into consideration. So there's the results section. And of course, in the appendix, what you need to do is put in all the other data. So one thing that I've got here, I've added the raw data. So Appendix A, raw data. Appendix B can be the SPSS output on here, and then Appendix C can be the PAR-Q, and Appendix D could be the informed consent form. And if you can do all that, that would be brilliant. However, please remember, what I'd like you to do is, for the raw results, it's in a landscape form. So what I've done is I've inserted a break. So I'll have to just do that at the end of this one as well. So Appendix A, raw data. At the end of it, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on breaks, and then section break, next page. So that goes on to the next page here. I'll just shrink this so you can see it. I'll put in a section break. There's the next page. And now because I've put in that section break, I can then orient that to portrait like so. So that's how it is. And then I can cut and paste my SPSS statistics if I need to. And then the informed consent and PAR-Q forms as well. Stick all that in. That is absolutely brilliant. Anyway, that's the assignment in a nutshell. Have fun with it, and I hope to read it soon. Thank you.